In our last episode we arrived in Norway, where we pitched our first camp at a popular location by a lake, before heading into Asker to spend 2 weeks with our friends, getting to know the local area, prepping up and departing into the wilderness again, to explore this truly beautiful country and its incredible landscape, and to see some of its history along the way. At the end of the last episode we found a mountain road that followed a river, hoping to find a suitable location to pitch camp for the night. And we found just that, and to date we've spent 2 nights here, soaking in our surroundings and just enjoying the wilderness. Megan's been doing some incredible cooking while we've been away on this trip, and when morale is low, it's exactly what you need. But after something to eat, it was time to test out our new rod down at the river. There she is, the master fisherwoman. Nice cast. We had a few bites, but the fish were more interested in the flies than they were our lure. But after a short period we did bring in a couple. They were just very small and not worth keeping, so we put them back. We'd been at camp for a couple of days, and we were both keen to see where the trail would take us. The flies were pretty tough where we were, and they were swarming almost all day. So we got camp packed up, prepared the vehicle, and set off up the trail, hoping we'd unlock some new camp areas that were a bit more exposed to the wind and a bit more rocky, which ultimately would mean less flies. I still hadn't repaired the viscous fan clipping the cowl, and the clicking was slowly driving me crazy. But the trail wasn't challenging. There were just occasional reminders of why no motorhomes would be up here, and we'd probably be on our own, which is what we wanted. When you see this, your first thought is to turn back. And it's an easy decision to make, but then there wouldn't be a story to tell. So at times like these, it's always good to get out of the vehicle and scout ahead to see what the actual damage is. I mean, I don't know what the laws are, but I'm guessing that someone would come here with a chainsaw anyway and just clear the path. But if we had a chainsaw, it would be a piece of cake. You'd just zip through them. But there are a tremendous amount of down trees, and they're not small ones like this. Some of them are, very sizable. I mean, we could drag them out of the way with the truck in terms of once you've cut it, you just put a strop round it and reverse and pull it off the path. But
we'll use a lot of fuel that way, won't we? And
it's not really going to use a lot of fuel. It's just the rest of the day will be just cutting, stropping, dragging, us moving stuff out of the way, and we've got another 15-20 kilometres to go, and I honestly don't know what it will be like. I mean, if it's like that for another 5 or 10k, then it's going to be a long time. It's going to be a lot of work, so I'm up for it if you are. Silky Zubat, love. It's basically a chainsaw in itself, right?
Yeah.
Meg wasn't completely convinced, so we continued scouting ahead, and I don't think what we found next helped the situation at all.
Oh wow, look!
Look at that, someone's had a bad day. I don't know how they would have lost that here. It's looks like a front drive shaft, CV joint. Oh dear me. I could be wrong, but I assured her that this was just a one-off, and probably someone driving stupidly down the track at the wrong time of year. But the more we walked, the more relics we found. It was actually very disappointing to see all these parts of vehicles left along this track. I could see why the locals didn't like the idea of 4x4s coming down here. But this aside, we carried on hiking, a few kilometres up the trail, where it opened out into a crossing that gave us a clear view of the mountain. And we made the decision together to clear the trees to see where this trail would take us. Okay.
Yep.
I think it likes you. Cool. Right. Level 1 complete. We were both unsure of how long this would go on for, but we were both enjoying it and making progress, and when you can see you're making progress, it drives you on. We were also taking it in turns to do the smaller stuff, just so we weren't stopping all the time. It's always tempting to just drive over or through something when you're in a vehicle like this, but there are sensitive elements underneath the vehicle, like rubber boots that hold grease and protect certain components, brake lines, fuel lines, things that twigs can get stuck up into and break, so it's best to always just move things out the way. After about 3 hours, we reached the open area where we found the crossing and decided it was time for something to eat.
So that's where we came off the main road onto the track.
Yeah.
Came all the way down there. We camped there. We've come all the way along to here. But we've still got loads
I mean, the thing is, oh look,
to get. And there's 2 river crossings by the looks of it as well.
yeah, the river level's low though.
I know, but we don't know whether the bridges are intact or not.
This is where technology comes in, and like in the future, when there's no wilderness left, you like push a button on your 4x4 and a drone goes out the top. But then that is the future, that's now. So I just don't really know what I'm on about. The ultimate treasure. You could make a bumper out of this. Ah, it's perfect fit. It's so unfortunate there'll be someone out there who's got a Cherokee who'd be like, that piece of aluminium would be exactly what I'm looking for. Oh Meg, it's ridiculous. It's a perfect fit. Oh man.
We can mark it like on a treasure map, and some Norwegian can come, or someone that's travelling Norway can come and pick it up.
There is an Overlanding Jeep Cherokee forum in Norway for people with those vehicles. So if you're watching, which you probably won't be, let me know if you want this. Go and get it and put it on your vehicle if you want an aftermarket top quality bumper. People go with aluminium though, because it's lighter, Meg, and it doesn't rot. This is where it's going to be. After a bite to eat and a bit of treasure hunting, we checked the map and made sure we were happy to continue. And then it was back to work, cutting trees and dragging them out the way. Megan's confidence is slowly growing driving the Jeep, more so off-road than on-road. It was more fun for me as well to be out of the hot seat and see her driving and enjoying herself. Is there? Oh yeah. A little bit further down the track, another tree in our path, this time a fairly sturdy pine, and despite our best efforts to clear the branches and move it by hand, it was just dug in too deep. So it was time to get the recovery kit out and try and tow the bulk of it off the track so we could get past. drag it out of the way. They seemed to go fairly well, and after a bit of Megan's handiwork, we were ready to move on to the next obstacle, which again required the use of the strop, simply because the trees had come down and twisted round each other. One of them was under quite a lot of tension, and I didn't want to risk us cutting the tree, releasing the tension, and potentially getting injured. We trimmed a few more branches and the trail was clear, and after this it seemed to be smooth sailing. No more downed trees, and we gained a little bit more elevation away from the river, into the rockier parts of the trail. And like many of the areas we'd been in Norway, it was a very beautiful area. You couldn't help but drive steadily and just be taken in by the scenery around you. And even though this wasn't the typical touristy place where people would visit, these little areas have their own beauty. These were the places on maps that we'd often look out for, places where we knew it would just be the two of us, and the nature around us. As we descended back down to the river, I was certain we were to face more downed trees and a lot more clearing, but instead we got a different surprise. We'd seen the bridge on the map, we knew it was coming, we just didn't know it had been completely destroyed. Look, I think we're in trouble.
Look at that. So when you said there's no bridge, don't go any closer, it might collapse. Here.
The water level, along with debris, had obviously damaged the bridge. Sadly, there was no getting around it, although we did find an alternative path about half a kilometre up from the bridge, which we decided to investigate. The trail continued on for quite a way and seemed to stop when it got to a large rock face. So we decided to admit defeat, turn back, and make our way back down the mountain road to the main road and try and find somewhere to camp. We followed signs to the nearest campsite, which seems counterintuitive in Norway given camping's free and accessible to all, but we hadn't showered in a long time and still hadn't bought a DC charger for the laptop, which made us dependent on electricity to charge it and create these videos. We ended up arriving at a campsite called Hogstall Heiter, situated in the mountains, although we didn't have time to appreciate the view on arrival, as we were swarmed by biting midges almost immediately. The Norwegians refer to them as knot, and they were absolutely relentless. Our head nets didn't seem to do any good. They got through the smallest of holes.
Alive.
Ugh. Yeah, it's literally like, look at it. It's like, it never stops.
No, it never stops.
Never stops. Even with the fly net on your head, they just come in.
I know, they're in. I've got like 20 inside my fly net.
Fortunately, the campsite owner took pity on us and offered us her smallest cabin at the price it would be to pitch a tent. It was basic, but it was everything we needed, and the best part was, as there were no flies, provided you didn't open the door for too long. Megan had reacted quite badly to the bites and was in quite a lot of discomfort. I've known 2 people in my life develop septicemia from high volumes of midge bites. When someone's been bitten hundreds and hundreds of times, it's always good to just keep an eye on them. Being in the cabin, though, just gave us that short break we needed. We could take a shower, charge the laptop, even use the hob provided in the cabin to do the cooking, and save on what little gas we had left. It also meant Megan could recover from her bites, and it meant I could keep an eye on her as well. following days brought with it a steady breeze, and with it, it took away the flies. It was one of the first days we could step outside and not be swarmed within minutes. And this really marked our cue to leave, so we got the vehicle packed up, thanked the owners for allowing us to stay in the cabin, and set off back down the mountain to our next destination. After a quick resupply, we joined another mountain road, this time heading to a popular tourist attraction and hike up one of Norway's tallest mountains, Stoppen. But before getting there, we couldn't help but stop at the side of the road and admire the view. It was an incredibly beautiful area. A short break and we continued to the base of the hike, which is a parking area where you could prep your gear, buy food and look at a trail map.
Wow, that's amazing.
Taking refuge from the wind on the concrete. I think we should either take it with us and then set it free somewhere where there's very little wind, or try and find a spot for it.
Somewhere sheltered.
We prepped our gear, packed some lunch and got our day sack ready, and then we set off up the mountain. It's approximately 8 kilometres there and back, and at the summit you're around about 1,880 metres above sea level, with some incredible views on a clear day, allowing you to see almost all of the south of Norway. We were both quite excited for this, especially Megan, given she really enjoys her photography. The hike is rated challenging and involves a lot of climbing and scrambling over rocks. Because of this, I'd recommend boots with ankle support to avoid injury, and definitely take good clothing. The weather's very changeable and the wind chill can make it feel like minus conditions the further up you go. But after a steady pace, we reached the summit, and the only battery with a hint of life left in it was Megan's phone. Despite this, the views were incredible, and we'll remember it forever. You could see almost all of the south of Norway, and we were very lucky that it was a clear day, and that there was no cloud cover at the time we were up there. And after spending some time at the top, we gorged ourselves on peanut butter, crackers, chocolate, and some juice, and then made our way back down the mountain. Once we got back down, it was time for something to eat, but it was getting late and the wind and cold were cutting through us, so we decided to move on and found a lay-by at the bottom of the mountain where we could cook some dinner and decide where to go next. When your moon hits your eye, look at a pizza in your...
You're an idiot.
I'm trying to give you moral support, love, because I know you're down and out. You don't have the reserves that I've got. You ain't got the stamina and the strength.
I do have stamina, thank
What?
you.
Just a minute ago you were tapping out.
I'm going to beat you up in a minute.
Meg, I'm so hungry.
But no, I'm starving.
After dancing around like idiots, singing and attempting to keep our morale up, we made some dinner and decided it would be a good time to leave, as we didn't realise it was almost 11:30 at night and people were probably trying to sleep. So we continued heading west and decided to drive a little bit later at night. We also drove past Vemork, a hydroelectric power plant with some history behind it. Adolf Hitler was using this facility in the Second World War for heavy water for his nuclear weapons program. There's a film about it, The Heroes of Telemark. Sadly it was late though, and we couldn't stop for the tour, but certainly something for the journey home. After a couple of hours more driving, we finally found a spot to camp, and it was actually very difficult in the area we were in, as there are a lot of holiday cabins around, and the infrastructure ironed out travellers and made it difficult to find places to camp in a vehicle. But it was a beautiful spot with the Hardangervidda National Park in the background, somewhere we were heading to later in our travels. You never quite get used to opening the window in the morning and seeing the incredible views you see from the tent. They change almost every day depending on where you go, but they're all equally as amazing in their own way. We were still 1,000 metres above sea level, and you could feel it in the temperature as we were awoken by a cool breeze. But this is where this part of the story ends, and hopefully you'll join us in the next episode where we travel west and then begin to head north through Norway before entering Sweden. So from me and Megan, thanks again for watching, and we hope we'll see you in the next episode. Take care.